Buzz Reviews.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for taking the time out of your day to support my brand new channel. This is my very first video review. My name is Warrenbutt, and for as long as I can remember, I have been super passionate about video games. My reviews on this channel will tend to focus on Xbox One games, but occasionally there may be PC games thrown into the mix. This is a review of the Xbox One version of The Binding of Isaac Rebirth, and I am coming from the perspective of someone who has had no previous experience with the Flash game or this version of the game on other platforms. Without further ado, let's take a look at The Binding of Isaac Rebirth for Xbox One. In the beginning of The Binding of Isaac, you watch crudely hand-drawn, still-shot cinematics in which you hear of the quiet and happy life of Isaac and his mother. This happy home life is turned upside down when Isaac's mother hears the voice of God. He first asks the mother to save Isaac from all evil things in his life, which can include things such as toys, what appears to be his Game Boy, and even his clothes. God then asks the mother to cut Isaac off from everything else in the world in order to confess his sins, so she traps Isaac alone in his room. When that was completed, God then asks the mother to prove her devotion to him by sacrificing Isaac. Isaac then sees his mother approaching his room through a crack in the door, wielding a butcher's knife. Scrambling, Isaac finds a trap door underneath his carpet and escapes into the basement. Part of the beauty of The Binding of Isaac is that much of the story is left for the player to fill in. This is a clear design element, reminding me of a twin shooter style indie game that's reminiscent of the Silent Hill way of storytelling. This is high praise from someone like me, whose favorite game of all time is Silent Hill 2. In between worlds, there will be loading screens that show a tormented Isaac, someone who has clearly experienced a great deal of trauma in his life. The Binding of Isaac Rebirth is the creation of Edmund McMillen, and has a similar art style to that of his previous Flash games and his most recent hit, Super Meat Boy. The difference here is that the style of this game can range from cutesy to macabre, and it doesn't take long before you realize as a player that there is shit everywhere. There's shit monsters, shit bosses, shit scattered around just waiting to be broken open, golden shits, regenerating red shits, and even petrified shits that Isaac holds because it makes him feel lucky. The art style oozes atmosphere. It really has that indie hand-drawn look. This, much like the rest of the game, never seems to lose its charm no matter how many hours you pump into it. The look and scrolling of the world is similar to that of the Legend of Zelda overhead games, and the look of each character, item, projectile, and enemy is clearly inspired and unique. This game is the epitome of replayability. The levels and worlds are randomly generated, item pickups are randomized, and still, after over 40 hours of gameplay, I am still experiencing new monsters, new bosses, new items, and new special abilities. There have been times where I meant to sit down for only a few minutes, and hours later I was still playing this game just to get my runs better and better. At the start of the game, you select your character Isaac, or through accomplishing special feats such as retaining a certain amount of health, overcoming a particularly brutal challenge, or amassing a small fortune, you can also unlock other characters to play as. The differences in these characters are small stat differences in starting items. Whereas the look of the world is reminiscent to that of the Legend of Zelda dungeons, the controls are more similarly comparable to that of a twin-stick shooter. The left stick controls the movement of Isaac, whereas the right stick picks the direction to shoot out Isaac's tears, which are the main projectiles of the game. The controls have a fluid feeling, but at the same time they are very tight and responsive. The Binding of Isaac Rebirth is a game that sheds many modern conventions in video games. If you die, you start at the beginning, all the way in the beginning in fact. The enemies and especially bosses are no pushovers either, which will provide you with many moments of excitement and utter frustration, sometimes being at the same time. Due to the randomness of a game, there is a risk-reward aspect. Curse rooms, for example, have a door that hurts you on entry and exit. Your character will lose a heart no matter what, but inside the room, there could be coins, a helpful item, soul hearts that provide an armor bonus, or maybe the room just contains enemies that serve as a giant middle finger to the player. There are also shop rooms where the player can spend coins to buy hearts, bombs, or items. The shop can be upgraded through donations of coins that carry over through different playthroughs. Some seem to have a gripe with the game where there is little to no information given as to the use of some items. Instead, one must rely on trial and error when there is little description. The other option, of course, is to consult a wiki, especially in moments where a bad item can ruin your run. There were absolutely times where I found myself hesitant to use another pill because the last pill made my tears shoot out slower. But there were just as many times where mystery pills gave me a buff of some sort that helped me in my run. There is also a multiplayer component to the game. At any point, another player can join the game by pressing the menu button. The enemies will have more health now, but there will be 2, 3, or 4 of you instead of just one player. Players 2, 3, and 4 will all become flying imps who can shoot projectile tears, but cannot pick up anything. Player 1 will still do all the picking up, but the alterations in the projectiles and abilities will carry over to each player. This aspect of the game adds an even deeper degree of variability to a game that already lends itself well to having no 2 runs feel the same way. The beauty of the Binding of Isaac is that every run you perform as a player is dramatically different from the last. Items you pick up will not only alter your stats, but will also affect how your character looks. I have had completely unrecognizable character models for Isaac by the end. Some gruesome, some weird, some cutesy, but all unique and inspired. The projectile tears I have shot have become gigantic and super powerful, or they have been able to shoot through solid objects. They have stunned opponents, or they have caused enemies to run in fear, among other things. What is wonderful though, is that when you pick up an item that alters your character, even if it is not along the lines of what you are looking for, you are always surprised and looking forward to how it changes your game. In summation, The Binding of Isaac Rebirth is very much worth your time. It harkens back to a time where games could not be beaten easily and progression was very much earned. If you are hesitant at all about a game that punishes imperfection, relies heavily on randomized elements, and has a risk-reward element, then perhaps this game is not for you. However, if you are a fan of video games in general, take pride in your skill as a player, and you enjoy the different elements that make this game so great, then I would definitely recommend you pick up this game. This game is well worth the $15 asking price and then some. All in all, I give The Binding of Isaac Rebirth 4.5 golden shits out of 5.